So our topic for tonight, like Amelia said, is how to pick a pet trainer 101. And we know that can be such a difficult and frustrating process. It can also be really confusing. We've been in the same shoes that you've been in, trying to find trainers on our end as well, whether for our own pets or for folks to refer members of our community to. So we know it can be a challenge. And we want to give you some more tools to help you be successful in that search and to help you find the trainer that's going to be the right fit for you and your pet. So when it comes to training, love is not, in fact, all that you need. Now, trainers, obviously, we get into this because we love pets, we love helping them and their people, but a history of loving pets and owning pets isn't enough. Your trainers need to be qualified. Now, this may include a number of things such as educational background and continued education. It might include professional certifications from standardized and accredited organizations. It might include professional affiliations with research groups, dog training communities, different things like that. In some cases, it might include having an established work history or case history studies for specialized skills and certifications. And on that note, many trainers do specialize in specific technical or behavioral skills. So again, picking the right trainer is really important. So how do you know what to look for? When you read a website, how do you know how to read it? Not just what's written, but what may not be written, what might not be shown. How do you know where to look for those pieces? When you're ready to reach out to a trainer, what questions should you ask to make sure it's a good fit? It's basically an interview between you and the trainer, but also between them and you. And what are some common red flags that you should look out for? Let's dig in. One of the cool things about training is many trainers come to it from a huge range of backgrounds, which again is really neat. And having a related degree in a training field isn't necessarily required. Now, of course, there are some degrees that are directly relevant, like psychology, applied behavior analysis, or ABA, ethology, which is the study of behavior. And if you were like me and your school didn't have an ethology degree, you might have taken a biology or a zoology degree. And this might also include behavioral research that you did as part of a degree, undergraduate or advanced. Degrees in animal sciences, including animal care and husbandry, and then specific colleges for training and animal care and zookeeping and things like that also have either trainer certification programs or associate degrees, or degrees that are similar to an associate's. Now, whether or not they have a college degree in a related field, and regardless of their background, you want to make sure that your trainer is qualified to be training. Have they passed a specific certifying program? There's a lot of them out there, and this is a partial list, but some of the ones that you might have heard of are Animal Behavior College, or ABC, Moore Park College, which is often used by zookeepers, Karen Pryor Academy, or KPA, Victoria Stilwell, Jean Donaldson Dog Training Academy. You might meet folks who are certified separation anxiety trainers, who are family pause parent educators for interactions with dogs and young children and infants. You will hopefully meet many fear-free certified professionals, from trainers to groomers to vets, in your time with your dog. If you're interested in sporting and working dogs, you might meet a certified nose work instructor or a sporting dog trainer. You might meet someone who's a certified behavior adjustment training instructor, or if you're interested in service work, a guide dog mobility instructor. There's a lot of alphabet soup out there. Now, if they've taken a certifying course, have they also passed standardized exams? Sometimes those come with the courses, sometimes they're separate. Some really popular ones that you might see are the Certified Professional Dog Trainer, Knowledge and/or Skills Assessed, CPDTKA. Skills Assessed is KSA. You might also see a Certified Professional Animal Trainer, which is Animals Beyond Dogs. You might see for folks with more specialized certifications, like a certified or associate certified dog and cat behavior consultant, or a certified applied animal behaviorist, or a veterinary behaviorist, which is a DMV with a behavior specialty. Those folks had to submit a required number of hours, as well as in-depth case studies to organizations to achieve those certifications. So those are very, very high level certifications. Beyond that, yes, we are still going. Have they taken continuing education units? Do they attend conferences or webinars or workshops or all of the above? Some really fantastic resources are out there, and many of them are available to anyone, regardless of whether or not you're a trainer. Living and Learning with Animals with Dr. Susan Friedman is one I've taken a couple times. Control Unleashed is a phenomenal program for trainers or community members for dogs with poor impulse control, whether that's overexcited behaviors or whether it's reactive behaviors. Really phenomenal classes. BAT and Tag Teach workshops and webinars are typically free. There's a lot of organizations that offer all of the above: conferences, webinars, classes, etc., such as the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, or IAABC. They actually have a partnership with Fenzi Dog Sports called the Lemonade Conference, which was offered online for the last several years. There's the Association of Professional Dog Trainers, APDT, Karen Pryor Academy, and Clicker Expo, which is their related conference. The Animal Behavior Society, which is one of the leading research groups in the world on animal behavior. And it's not specifically training related, but they do have their certified applied animal behaviorist program that we mentioned earlier. You, of course, might see the certified professional dog trainers, or CPDT, that we mentioned on the last slide with their certifying and standardized tests. And you might see the Animal Training Academy, among many others, by the way. And again, do they have professional affiliations? Are they staying up to date with the real time things happening in the community? Again, IAABC, ABS, CPDT, APDT, professional group, and Karen Pryor Academy always have very regular publications coming out, webinars, different things like that. There's so many ways to stay involved and current in the field. And ideally, you want to work with a trainer who's doing those things, who's keeping up to date on what's going on in the field, because they're going to be most effective in helping you solve any behavior problems that you might need to work on. Now, as a trainer, you should know that you'll never know it all. It's impossible. Someone is going to know it better than you. We say might, but they're going to. You're going to know when to refer out and probably who to refer out to. You're going to know that there's always more to know, and ideally, you want to know it. You know, the field is always evolving and we are always learning. And if you encounter a trainer who feels differently, be cautious. We'll talk more about that later. Along some of those lines, when it comes to education, not all educational and certifying programs are the same. The programs that we listed teach about a variety of methods. They all focus on training utilizing positive reinforcement methods. And the reason for that is those methods are supported by over 100 years of research on behavior, learning, and psychology in both humans and animals, which is really cool. Now, there are some certifying organizations such as IACP, which is the International Association of Canine Professionals, that do advocate for what's called balanced training. We'll define that in a minute. They use aversive tools or advocate for aversive tools and methods and support practices that are widely considered to be inhumane, like debarking and different things like that. So you definitely want to make sure that you are reading up on what that alphabet soup comes from. Don't just see lots of letters and assume it means they're going to be a great trainer. Have some familiarity with at least the really big ones. Good, better, and best. Pick the right trainer for the job. If you're working on some basics and you don't have any big significant concerns, you don't need a certified behaviorist. A basic foundations trainer will be just fine for most dogs who are at that level. But if you're working on something more significant, like separation anxiety, you probably do want to work with a specialist in that field. Part of choosing the right trainer comes down to selecting someone with the specific skills and education required to help you and your pet achieve your goals. Now, that might mean working with one trainer that you stick with for quite a long time, or it might mean that you work with several over the course of your pet's lifespan, depending on their experiences, their history, and what you want to achieve together. Any trainer that you work with or are thinking about working with should be able to clearly define and describe the training methods they use using accurate technical language and terms. It can be a little bit much, but we're going to define them for you, so don't worry. They should also be able to demonstrate a clear understanding of how those methods are and are not used to train and resolve behavior concerns. They should be able to tell you which tools they use, from harnesses to types of reinforcement, treats, play, praise, play, whatever it might be, and what outcomes those tools are designed to achieve. They should know that. They should also be able to tell you what tools and methods they don't use and why, as clearly as how they described what they do use. So if I'm saying I don't use a prong collar, I should be able to tell you why I don't use a prong collar, not just that I don't. And it shouldn't just be an I don't like them sort of response. It should be comprehensive. So before we dig into what the specific training methods look like and why we may or may not recommend them in the first place, let's explore a little bit briefly about learning theory to better understand how our pets learn and how behavior works in the first place. Now, a quick note, we did a deep dive on this topic in one of our previous behavior and training lectures called How Behavior Works, Learning Theory and Training Methods. It's on our YouTube channel. Amelia referenced that earlier, so you can find that along with many other presentations on there. This is the extremely condensed version. So here we go. Learning occurs for all animals based on these foundational pieces. Behavior is designed to achieve outcomes and is influenced by the environment. Behavior doesn't happen for no reason. It is functional. It makes something work. A quick example of that, there is no reason for me to jump or flail or scream or shout. But if a spider were to land on me, I would absolutely behave in all of those ways. Behavior is never random, and every single thing your pet does, big or small, is a behavior. This includes both internal behaviors and external behaviors. An internal behavior might be something like a yawn, which could be your dog alleviating some tension, saying they're sleepy or they're just waking up. We don't really know, but we can look at the rest of their contextual behavior. Are they just waking up? Did they just play? Are they having a somewhat uncomfortable interaction with another dog on leash? That's going to tell us more about what that yawn is doing. Now, an external behavior are the bigger things that you probably know what's going on, like a bark or a growl. A growl is obviously trying to add space between your dog and whatever is potentially approaching them. So behavior is always doing something, whether it's an internal process for that animal or an external process involving their environment. The second piece of this is that pets learn based on the immediate consequences following those behaviors. And we're talking about a 1 to 4 second window. It's really immediate. So I'm not going to dig into this now, but there was a study related to that came out in 1995, and we talk about it more in the longer presentation. So spoiler alert, you're going to have to go check that out for more information. What we do know is that these rules do not vary by individual. If a trainer is telling you that a pet is too stubborn or willful or dominant or vindictive to perform a behavior or to learn a certain way, this speaks to a lack of understanding of behavior, learning, and training methods on the trainer's part. It is not an accurate reflection of the pet's learning ability or the rules governing it. Take a moment to really think about that, because we've all heard or said or felt things like that before. At least I think we all have. It is not individual specific. This applies to every animal it's been studied in, and we're talking about hundreds of species over, again, around 100 years. Using that sort of language sets up a misunderstanding behind the intention of the behavior and the communication behind the behavior, and that can be really dangerous. We'll talk about that more a bit later on, and a great way to dig in on that further is to see Dr. Susan Friedman's work on labels. And her website, I'll include it in the follow-up, is behaviorworks.org. So when we discuss training methods and how they relate to learning theory, we first need to define and clarify the language because we know there's a lot of misunderstanding and confusion even among trainers, which might be surprising for folks. So positive and negative do not mean good or bad. In fact, we're just talking about math. And a good way to remember that is look at those abbreviations, the plus and the minus sign. Positive means I add something to the environment, and negative means I remove it. And of course, I can add or remove good and bad things. A similar concept is true with reinforce or reinforcement and punish or punishment, R and P. Reinforcement increases occurrence of behavior, and punishment decreases or suppresses behavior. And I can increase or decrease desired or undesired behavior. So again, those terms by themselves do not mean good things happen or bad things happen. The other term you're going to hear me use quite a lot tonight is aversive. And this is anything that causes fear, pain, physical or emotional discomfort, and they're all designed to stop behavior. It basically is anything an animal doesn't like: tastes, smells, sounds, again, physical sensations, any emotional sensations, anything like that is aversive. And that is determined by the learner in many ways as well, not just the trainer. So positive reinforcement. So this is when we add something desired to the environment to increase occurrences of desired behavior. So your very classic, ask for a sit, dog sits, give them a treat. And while food is considered a primary reinforcer, meaning the pet doesn't need to learn that food is valuable, food is not the only reward when it comes to positive reinforcement. In fact, anything an individual perceives as valuable can be used as reinforcement. This could be, again, praise, playtime, affection, going for a walk, taking a break, anything that they like. And many positive reinforcement trainers, hopefully all positive reinforcement trainers, will tell you to have a variety of reinforcers available during a session, whether it's multiple treats and a couple toys, again, praise and affection. You want to have a wide range of reinforcers. A common pushback from balanced or aversive trainers, and balanced means they use a variety of training methods, is that positive reinforcement is, quote, cookie pushing. But this illustrates a misunderstanding of what positive reinforcement actually is and how broadly it can be used. As we just described, there's lots of things that are reinforcing for our animals, not just food. Another example of this method being misunderstood is balanced trainers who apply punishment, such as a shock, and then give food when the undesired behavior stops. They'll describe this as using a combination of positive reinforcement following punishment, but in actuality, pairing food with punishment can poison a reward, where the food is no longer perceived as reinforcing or rewarding. And this is based on observable behaviors from the animal. This is not positive reinforcement. And if you've been in a chat with me before, you've probably heard me say that I'm afraid of spiders. If you were to offer me creme brulee whenever a spider was present, if the spider was too close to me or too intense, I'm going to start feeling bad about that creme brulee. It stops becoming a reward. So oftentimes we see a misunderstanding of how positive reinforcement is used among balanced or aversive trainers. So positive punishment is when we add something aversive to the environment to decrease or suppress behavior. And these methods have been around in the dog training field for a long time. And many old school style trainers and or trainers who focus on the, fun fact, scientifically disproved dominance or alpha theories will use positive punishment as their primary training method and the associated associated tools, as their go-to resources. Things like prong collars, choke chains, e-collars, things of that nature. Now, while these trainers often claim to or believe that these are necessary tools or accurate theories to follow, they are either unsupported scientifically or have been outright disproved for decades, like the alpha and dominance theory philosophies that are out there. More importantly, these tools that are associated with this type of training suppress behavior. They don't resolve it. and they address symptoms of behavior, not causes of behavior. This is really important to understand because we can't resolve a behavior without understanding why it occurs in the first place and train for the specific context it occurs in. For example, barking. Barking can occur across a huge range of contexts and situations for many, many reasons. And a trainer who recommends a bark collar as a general blanket to stop a behavior has missed the most important piece, why the behavior is happening in the first place. Digging in even deeper, these tools rely on the pet failing. So think about those positive punishment tools, such as prong, choke, and shock collars. When do we use them? Before or after a behavior? It's after a behavior. Your pet has to fail before we tell them they did something that we didn't like. So following up on that, these tools aren't teaching. They're just stopping or interrupting a behavior, which they might do very successfully, but that's not the same as teaching the pet what to do instead. So it seems like a short-term success, but it is a long-term commitment. You're never going to stop pressing that remote for barking behavior if you don't teach the pet to feel comfortable in a situation so they don't have to bark in the first place. If you're using tools that rely on failure, you're never going to stop the behavior from happening in the first place. Or if we do suppress the behavior, you're going to often see other things happen instead. And in many cases, the behaviors that happen instead are your pet redirecting whatever stressor was causing the initial behavior. And those replacement behaviors will also have to be trained. And in some cases, may be worse than what you were originally trying to address. So negative reinforcement is when we remove something aversive when desired behavior increases. And this is commonly misunderstood. This training method also involves aversives, and they're applied until the pet performs desired behavior, which is reinforcement, that you, and at which time you remove the aversive. So let me describe that again. They are always wrong until they do something right. And then what feels punishing, or I'm sorry, the aversive is removed. Okay. So when this happens, I'll give you an example. Desired behavior will increase because the animal wants to avoid the aversive. So an example of that might be, imagine a dog who pulls on leash, and instead of them pulling so hard they're on their tiptoes, you hold the leash so high they're on their tiptoes, and you keep it there until they stop pulling and start walking next to you. And only then do you lower the leash. That's negative reinforcement. You're always wrong until you end up next to me, and then you're right until you get it wrong again. And this can often be called escape training or avoidance training methods, because they will avoid doing something because they don't want that aversive introduced. Doesn't sound very intuitive, does it? So like positive punishment, this method requires your dog to fail without direct teaching what successful behavior looks like. And even when they do make the desired choice, it doesn't mean the trainer necessarily is reinforcing that behavior when it continues. It just means they don't continue punishing. So keep that in mind. Just because I've lowered the leash doesn't mean I'm rewarding you necessarily for continuing to walk next to me. And it doesn't mean I was rewarding you for walking next to me before I pulled up on the leash. So again, there's many, many missed opportunities for teaching with this type of training method as your forward method. And it often, again, involves a misunderstanding of how animals learn and how behavior works. So negative punishment is when we remove something desired to decrease undesired behavior. And this always sounds so bad with that double negative, but it's actually a very subtle training method. Negative punishment, again, involves removing something your pet wants to show them a behavior isn't successful. So if my dog jumps on me with the intention of initiating play, and I step backwards and don't engage, I've removed access to the outcome they wanted. But this by itself is a very challenging method to use and can lead to what we call extinction bursts. And this is where a behavior may be repeated more frequently with greater intensity or increased variability, So instead of just jumping on me, now my dog is jumping and grabbing, and maybe they're also barking before they try something different. And they do this because their previous history and experience has taught them that jumping on me has initiated play. So why isn't it working now? So negative punishment by itself communicates clearly, but still doesn't teach the way that we really need it to. So we always want to pair negative punishment with redirecting to a more preferred behavior, and then positively reinforcing whenever any of those behaviors are performed instead. So by pairing those two pieces together, we fill in those blanks for our dog. This doesn't work, but this does. And by training proactively and using positive reinforcement and well-timed redirection, we won't even need to use that negative punishment because we'll have spent the time teaching our dog what does work and what they can do instead of jumping in the first place. So this is really important. We can use this method, but only successfully, ideally, if you pair it with redirection and positive reinforcement when that more preferred or desired behavior occurs. Okay. So, as you've likely gathered, positive reinforcement methods tie in very nicely with learning theory, and negative punishment isn't that bad either. They're the most directly in line with how animals learn. I performed a behavior, was it successful? If the answer is yes, that's very positively reinforcing. The answer is no, that's a bit more negatively punishing. And again, we're always going to pair that negative punishment with a redirect to an alternate behavior that will be more successful. And it's really important to know these behaviors we redirect our pets to have to meet the same function and need. And that's actually where a lot of trainers who struggle with positive reinforcement training make mistakes. And we'll dig into that a little bit later, is not redirecting to the right behavior. So when your pet is behaving, I always want you to think about a couple things. What is my pet doing? What is their behavior and why are they doing it? What's the context they're behaving in? Is this behavior appropriate? And if not, what training can I use to help them do better? And hopefully you're all thinking positive reinforcement. So when you're working with a trainer in any case, but especially if you're working on more significant behaviors that need more modification than the average pup might, you want to work with a trainer who's using Lima-based principles and strategies in what we call the Humane Hierarchy. Lima stands for least invasive, minimally aversive. It's a competence-based philosophy, and it involves a lot of continued education. It is focused on positive reinforcement first and understanding your specific learner or the pet that you're training. It involves systematic problem solving and strategies. Lima philosophies prevent abuse. They involve giving the learner choices and which gives them control, which helps them feel more comfortable and confident in their environment, and lets many training plans move forward more quickly, more efficiently, and more safely, depending on what you're working on. And Lima also means asking, what do you want the animal to do? The answer to this question would be the goal of whatever your training plan is going to be. And again, punishment-based training, whether it's positive punishment or negative punishment, doesn't really ask or answer that specifically. It relies on undesired behavior occurring first. And it also includes negative reinforcement. So the Humane Hierarchy is a roadmap that we use to work through behavior challenges. And when it comes to behavior and training, we have to remember that managing behavior starts at the very basic beginnings for our pets, their basic biological needs, their health, their wellness, in conjunction with the environment that they are living or behaving in. Sometimes solving behavior concerns is as simple as changing the environment, such as closing the blinds to reduce barking at passing dogs, or moving a scratcher post to a new location to encourage appropriate scratching. We may not even need to build more complex training plans for some behavior. So the Humane Hierarchy has you starting right at the beginning of what might I need to modify to help my pet be more successful. And again, we dig into this much more deeply in the presentation on how behavior works, which you will get a link to in the follow-up. So again, whether you're working on basics or more serious behavior concerns, you want to work with a trainer who's looking to set you and your pet up for success and to resolve behaviors rather than to provide a quick fix or offer a one-tool solution, which is one-tool solutions are designed to suppress more than to provide true solutions to behavior, like we've kind of touched on already. Whoops. Thanks, mouse. Okay. As a quick overview of this roadmap, the exits that you see on that map are from least invasive at the bottom to most aversive at the top. And this hierarchy is used by trainers all around the world and animal professionals all around the world, from pet trainers to trainers at zoos and aquariums. In fact, both the guidelines for shelter veterinarians and the guidelines for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, or AZA, require facilities to become accredited and to follow principles that use the current best practices as supported by science, which is positive reinforcement. And then, because it's kind of cool, a direct quote from the AZA guidelines is that the institution should follow a formal written animal training program that facilitates husbandry, science, and veterinary procedures and enhances the overall health and well-being of the animals. The explanation of that is an animal training program should be based on current animal training best practices in the zoological field and should include the following elements: goal setting, what behaviors are to be trained, what species/individuals are of priority, a planning process, which is your process for developing and approving training plans, and documentation or a record of your successes. In short, if a zookeeper uses positive reinforcement to train a tiger or a hippo to participate voluntarily and enthusiastically in their healthcare, you don't need to use pain or fear to teach your dog to walk on a leash. When trying to find a trainer, reading through websites, we're switching gears now, can be overwhelming. Language matters. People's passion for pets is very often evident on their websites, and it can be really hard to choose a trainer just based on how they feel about animals alone, because we all love them. So how can you tell the difference between a trainer who sounds good, is good, and is providing the right sort of training for your pet's specific needs? One of the things that we can do is focus on how the trainers use language to talk about their training, their methods, the animals they work with, their backgrounds, etc. Remember also to look for evidence of education, certification, and professional affiliation. All right, couple things to keep an eye out for as well. When trainers are talking about the language or about the training they do and they're using their language, are they articulate and specific about their methods? Some trainers may not know or may not be comfortable with technical terms. Some may misunderstand positive reinforcement, like we discussed, which may result in an innocent but ignorant misuse of terms. They may use unclear phrasing, which may result in confusion. And again, we want to watch how they talk about the animals they're training. And if they're not using clear language or specific terms, ask more questions and be cautious. And I will tell you, we're going to introduce a resource to you at the end of this presentation, but many of these tips and questions are pieces that we developed while my team and I were reading over hundreds of trainer websites around the San Diego area in preparation to develop some resources for our community. So we know how challenging and confusing some of this can be from firsthand experience. So how does the trainer speak about their methods? We're going to look at an example where language makes a big difference, and this company is not local to San Diego. So a trainer's positive dog training philosophy, that's a direct quote, discusses bond building and trust building, reading behavior, improving communication, all of which sound great. They then go on to say, it is only through making a wrong decision that your dog can learn and better understand what the expected behavior is. And they then discuss using the leash as guidance to make the correct choices and as a tool to gently remind them to make correct choices when they fail to do so. These are ways of talking about behavior that you hear from balanced trainers. And while they don't identify themselves as balanced trainers anywhere on their website, and they use the term positive dog training philosophy throughout, their staff did confirm it via conversation with my team. And they use the term positive to describe their training philosophy, which is not incorrect. Because remember, positive can be linked with both reinforcement and punishment. So watch for those details. Don't just look for words like positive dog training philosophy or positive training. It doesn't always mean positive reinforcement. It's very subtle in some cases. Another example from a local trainer is looking for language that maybe isn't there or isn't really what it looks like. One local trainer describes working as a show trainer at an organization known to use positive reinforcement, very broadly known to use positive reinforcement. The show they worked at, however, was operated by a contract company that was known to use balance methods. This wasn't mentioned on the website. The trainer holds a master dog trainer certification from another dog training company, which, according to my searches, is now inactive. And this company wasn't a standardized or accredited certifying program or company. So they have a certification, but it's not really weighted the same way as a standardized or accredited one might be. Other trainers at the company had no posted certifications, though some did have directly relevant degrees, which is nice. Additionally, this trainer made no explicit mention of methods or the tools they used, but they did reference invaluable training philosophies and correcting behavior. Correcting behavior is also a term that we hear amongst balanced trainers, and we've had many conversations with folks who have worked with these trainers, and they do use those balanced methods. Additionally, this website has graphics suggesting they are supporting or professional members of several positive reinforcement focused organizations, but they as trainers adhere to a different methodology. So again, we know how confusing this can be, and this may not be intentional. I want to clarify that. It may not be intentional on the part of the training group, but it can be confusing, and you do want to read closely when looking at trainer websites. So here's a different example of how a trainer speaks about their methods. This is a local trainer, Dogmantics or Kiko Pup. If you follow them on YouTube, they're local to San Diego. And she has an entire section of her website devoted to a clear discussion about their methods, which she calls progressive training reinforcement due to the blend of positive reinforcement with very intentional usage of the earlier steps in the Humane Hierarchy. And she writes, teaching by reinforcing and training desired behaviors, interrupting and preventing undesirable behaviors without the intentional use of physical or psychological intimidation, and taking into consideration the learner's physical health and emotional state. Educating oneself with the goal of employing humane, effective training based on the latest scientific evidence. That's pretty clear. You probably won't have many questions about what type of training they're using. And I didn't include it here, but she did preface this sentence with progressive training reinforcement is XYZ. So how does the trainer speak about the animals they work with? Do they use subjective language or objective language? This first example is from an organization local that trains other trainers as well as taking on clients themselves. And they say they work with dogs of all types, small, large, good temperament, as well as weak, both dominant and submissive, and high-strung, as well as very calm. This subjective language suggests a poor understanding of animal behavior, animal hierarchies, and the danger and illustrates the danger of labeling an animal rather than functionally assessing an individual's behavior in a given context. So you're just saying this dog is dominant as opposed to saying this dog behaves this way in this situation. Using subjective language provides no specific behavior information, like I just described, and leaves too much open to assumption and interpretation based on what your own ideas of what that behavior looks like, as well as, of course, the trainer's idea. Trainers who use exclusively this language may focus only on the behaviors they expect based on the label they've chosen, and may not notice or may disregard behaviors that don't fit their expectations, so they might miss things. For example, we receive many inquiries on our behavior helplines for assistance with, quote, aggressive dogs. This term has been applied to dogs who are displaying high arousal behaviors, fear or anxiety-based behaviors, etc. And the intention of most of these dogs is not usually to do harm. So the term aggressive is technically inaccurate as far as describing the behavior or the individual. While the full range of these behaviors can be addressed with positive reinforcement training methods, the specific training plans and needs of each individual will likely vary significantly. So using one label to address them all, or using one method to address them all, one training style to address them all, not specifically method, makes a really big difference if you are doing it on an individual basis. Now, the next example, also from a local trainer, is the dog would bark, lunge, and begin biting or chewing on his leash. So the objective language we're seeing here gives us a very clear picture of what is happening when this individual encounters another dog on leash. Biting and chewing likely indicates high arousal, whereas if they described hiding or trying to escape, it would more likely indicate fear and a desire to avoid conflict. So you can see the different picture we get from just a simple label compared to an objective description of an individual's behavior. Now, while it might be easier to use subjective language at times, particularly when learning to use more objective language, it's important to work with a trainer who understands the difference and trains based on objective observations of your pet's specific behavior during specific contexts. To summarize this again, subjective language makes assumptions and generalizations about behavior. It often fails to acknowledge individual differences, contextual information, and accurate and documented species or social behavior information. Objective language, however, is specific to an individual and a context. It describes behavior that can be functionally assessed. Functionally assessed, by the way, means how it works, what is it doing. It allows us to analyze that specific behavior. Objective language does not include assumptions about the emotional state or intention of that pet, and it doesn't generalize it across all contexts or interactions, nor does it assume that is an inherent part of the pet. So if I say my pet is shy, my pet is aggressive, that assumes that is part of who my pet is, and that is not accurate. We need to describe specific behaviors. Okay, so switching gears again. Aside from looking at trainer qualifications and methods, what else can we be asking about? There are many, many great questions you could ask on an individual basis, but some good general suggestions might be to dig in a bit deeper on their background if you want more information. Ask about it. They should be willing to discuss it with you. And something good to note is, in general, the more education and involvement a trainer has with other organizations and professionals in the animal behavior, environment, and training fields, and this includes all animals under human care, from marine mammals to elephants to reptiles and insects, the more likely they are to use positive reinforcement and Lima training methods and ethics. So that's kind of good to know. If they are working with animals, surrounding themselves with folks who work with animals, and are continuing their education with all of those people and fields, they're more likely to follow positive reinforcement methodologies. You should also be asking a trainer about their favorite behaviors to teach, what they specialize in. For me, that might be, I really love working with animals who are poorly socialized or who are experiencing fear. Ask them about their limitations as well. They should be able to tell you what their limitations are and when they would refer out to another trainer. For myself, that would probably be resource guarding and separation anxiety. I have a good working knowledge of the basics and mild resolutions for both, but for more significant concerns, I'm absolutely referring to a trainer who's more well-versed than I am. A trainer should be able to tell you what they are skilled at and what they still need to learn more about. And then as appropriate, if you have more significant training concerns, you might need to ask about the trainer's history of training specific behaviors or ask to see case studies. Some red flags that we want you to look out for are trainers who guarantee behavior. Behavior is contextually dependent and based upon an individual's learning history and experiences. And while it can be predicted, it cannot be guaranteed. Any trainer who's charging large sums of money up front, especially if it's prior to meeting the pet, that's a big concern. They should meet the pet to know if you're going to be a good fit, if you're going to have the right skills to work together before they are charging you any money. And especially if you're seeing refund policies that don't seem great, if they ask for money up front and there are no refunds available, that's problematic. Additionally, trainers who are asking for things like this are typically balanced or aversive trainers, especially if they're advertising a short turnaround time for the training. This often applies to board and trains. There are very few board and trains in San Diego that do not use balanced or aversive methods. So be very mindful of that. Additionally, if a trainer is asking what breed you have before discussing their methods with you, or if they're saying that certain methods don't or won't work with certain breeds, that's very, very concerning. Remember, all animals learn and can be trained using the same methods and tools when they're applied appropriately. This does not vary by species, sex, or breed. Trainers who use one tool to address all behavior problems are concerning. Prong, choke, chain, e-collars, or in rare cases, trainers who will use multiples of those at once. For example, a prong collar and an e-collar, which is considered very unethical and inhumane, according to Lima and many other organizations. Additionally, like we've discussed, trainers who subscribe to the alpha dominance or pack leader philosophies, the original scientific paper that theory was based on has been discredited and scientifically disproved for decades. I think we are actually past 50 years now. Additionally, let's see, where are we? Additionally, fear, pain, and intimidation focused training methods and tools, again, are not humane and go against the ethical standards for many organizations. So it isn't just they're using one tool, it's using any of those tools or any of those philosophies, alpha, dominance, etc., goes against ethical standards worldwide. Any trainer who's referring to positive reinforcement as cookie pushing or, unfortunately, scoffs at new information about other methods. If someone is saying that positive reinforcement doesn't work, either they don't understand how it works, or they've been using it incorrectly, or they're missing the information they need to apply the training correctly. So for example, if a dog is jumping on me, and again, they're trying to play, I will get a different response from the dog and a different outcome if I tell the dog to go get a toy that's on the floor instead of jumping, or if I throw one for them. So if I am always telling the dog who's running towards me, looking to interact, to go get a toy that's on the ground, that's not going to be successful because they're looking to interact with me. If I throw a toy for them, that is positively reinforcing, and that is giving them the outcome they're looking for. They will be more likely to go after the toy you throw than to jump on you. So asking for the right things because you understand what the behavior intention is and what the outcome your dog is looking for is makes a big difference in whether or not a method is successful. Additionally, any trainer who is getting upset, ignores, gets or feels challenged or acts challenged when they're asked about using more humane methods and training is setting a really dangerous precedent. Again, at this point, we have around 100 years of research supporting positive reinforcement as being the most effective learning method in humans and many, many animals. So this red flag should be taken very seriously. All right, folks, quick fixes and magic wands. The only magic in training is a solid training plan, dedicated owners, and consistency, which honestly is pretty magical. When it comes down to it, no trainer, no matter how skilled they are, has a magic wand. There are no true quick fixes. And training is a lifelong activity that you should be sharing with your pet daily, like walks, meals, and playtime. A trainer might offer or guarantee a quick fix, but like we've discussed, that's not how behavior works. Behavior has to be learned, and it must, if you're changing established patterns, it's going to take time. And starting off with a quick fix, like using a balance or aversive method, often results in causing additional behavior challenges that you'll have to address later, like we discussed. So, as you have gathered, there are many things that we need to consider when choosing a trainer. And it's important to ask questions and approach this with a critical eye. You can reach out to professional organizations like us for recommendations or for vetting trainers. You can visit a school or a certifying program's website and search for trainers in your area. And when you reach out to those trainers, still ask about methods. Not all trainers will stay consistent with what they were originally taught. And several organizations will actually withdraw that trainer certification if they are made aware of that. They take that very, very seriously. When it comes to asking friends and neighbors, they are great folks to reach out to for dinner recommendations. But when it comes to asking for dog training help or any pet training help, ask a professional. Unless they are very familiar with all of these pieces and all of these nuances, they're not going to give you answers that you aren't going to have to sort through anyway. And they might love a trainer, but they might not understand why the methods that trainer used may not have been ideal for them or for their pet. So always go to organizations you can trust and do the research on your own. So talking about those resources, if you're looking for a trainer, we just finished compiling, well, finish is a loose term, our positive reinforcement pet trainer directory. This does include trainers for cats and other animals as well. You can find the short link right here. We'll also send this to you in the follow-up. Primarily, the trainers in this document are in San Diego County, but we do have some folks from outside of it in Orange and LA County as well. If you think we're missing someone who should be on this list, absolutely reach out to us. This list is dynamic. It's always growing, and we're always building and adding on to it. We went through, again, hundreds of trainer websites to compile this list. We reached out to all of them to confirm methodologies. And if you think someone needs to be on here that we may have missed, it's entirely possible. Please reach out and let us know. And if you find a trainer who sounds good and don't see them on the list, let us know that as well. Reach out. We can help you vet that trainer. We can take a peek at their website, give them a call if you don't feel comfortable doing so, and get some of that information for you. Additionally, if you need some help decoding that alphabet soup, I know there was a lot of it. We are very shortly going to have an appendix joining that directory. It'll be on the same page that will explain all of those pieces. We were hoping to have it ready today, but we are not quite there yet. Give us a couple of days and it will be up. One of the things we want you to remember is that any trainer you work with is on a journey. We all start somewhere, and hopefully, as we grow, we get better at doing what we love. We do this by increasing our knowledge, our skills, and learning from our very diverse community of trainers. Remember, we are all in this because we love and want to help animals. So for any trainer you look up, assume good intent, but always do research when trying to find a trainer that will be the best fit for your training goals. We also know that you're on a journey. So if anything you've heard here today felt hard or difficult, given your own past experience with training, be gentle with yourself. Your intentions are good. In fact, they're phenomenal. Even if your methods and trainer didn't always align with what we discussed this evening. I myself grew up using choke chains with my dogs because 30 some odd years ago, that's what we had. That's what we knew. But we learn and we grow, and that's okay. Remember, training isn't always easy. Setbacks are very normal, and consistency is your biggest key to success. And training is lifelong for your pet, whether it's for fun behaviors or for functional behavioral needs. Focus on playing the long game. And remember, all of us always do the best we can with the knowledge that we have. Thank you all so much for joining me this evening. I know we covered a lot of material, and a lot of somewhat complex pieces. So I'm going to pause and open up for questions. And thank you all for joining me. So if you are looking for a trainer, you can now search our Positive Pet Trainer directory. This is the short link, and you can find it on our website under our behavior and training section under services. The trainers on this directory are primarily in San Diego County, though we did include some folks from Orange, Riverside, and Los Angeles counties as well. If you don't see someone on this list that you think should be there, please let us know. We're happy to review their website, reach out to them, and make sure they are appropriate for us to add. And if you need help vetting a trainer, we're happy to help you with that as well, making sure that you're working with the folks that are going to be the best fit for you and your pet. Oftentimes when looking up trainers, we know there's a lot of alphabet soup. There's a lot of letters following folks' names, and that can be hard to understand or determine which one is what you need. So we now have an appendix on that directory. It's a very handy guide. It will tell you what those acronyms stand for, who issues those certifications, and you can visit those programs yourselves to learn if they are the ones for you. And of course, if you need training, here at San Diego Humane Society, we offer over 35 training classes for both dogs and cats, both foundational skills and specialty classes. One of the really good ways to approach training if you do need special help with your pet is to do a combination of group classes and then private lessons. That's a really nice economical option. That way you can address the general concerns in a group class and then get more specialized and specific help with your particular situation with your pet. That makes private lessons more accessible for many families. Being able to offer classes both in person and online is really helpful for many of the pets in our community who may not be comfortable or safe attending an in-person class. So those online courses provide us safe spaces for those dogs and cats, whether it's for basic behaviors, for fearful behaviors, for anything that might fall under the umbrella of reactive behaviors, and so forth. Always remember that training is a journey and your trainer is on one. We all start somewhere, and hopefully as trainers, we grow and we get better at doing what we love. By increasing our knowledge, our skills, and learning from our diverse community of trainers, there are so many things that we can achieve and so many different ways that we can grow as trainers. We're all in this because we love and want to help animals. So always assume good intent from any trainer that you are, looking into, but always do your research when trying to find a trainer that will be the best fit for you and your training goals. Also remember that you're on a journey. Be gentle with yourself. Sometimes the more we learn about training, the more we realize that things we had done in the past weren't really things that maybe we should have been doing. And that can feel really hard. And I get it. 30 years ago, I myself grew up using choke chains with my dogs because that's what we had. That's what we knew. We always do the best we can with the knowledge we have. Remember, when you're training, it isn't always easy and setbacks are normal. So being consistent is going to be the key to getting where you want to go. Along those lines, training is lifelong, whether you're training fun behaviors or functional behaviors. Focus on playing the long game. And once again, remember, we always do the best we can with the knowledge that we have at the time. We're always learning. We're always growing. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to chatting with you further and discussing any questions you might have. Happy training.